The wind rolled softly across the empty ranch as the shy lonely cowboy, Eli, stood by the old barn, staring at the woman he had married only 3 hours ago. She was taller than any woman he had ever seen, her presence filling the quiet night with a kind of warmth he had never known. She stepped closer, her voice trembling with a mix of urgency and tenderness as she whispered the words that froze him in place. He wasn't expecting such vulnerability from someone who carried herself like a storm wrapped in silk, and it shook something inside him he didn't know existed. He swallowed hard, unable to speak as she approached. Her large hands trembled slightly, betraying the confidence everyone assumed she had. "Don't move," she breathed again, trying to hide the fear under her boldness. "I need to make love now," she said, but her voice cracked and revealed the truth. She wasn't demanding anything. She was begging for connection, for reassurance that she wasn't alone in this vast new chapter. Eli felt his heart twist. He had never been wanted before, not like this, and the weight of it both terrified and humbled him. The giant bride, Mara, looked down at him, expecting him to push her away. That was what people always did. They laughed at her size, her strength, the awkward way she moved through the world. She had learned to pretend she didn't care, but tonight, the mask slipped. She wanted to belong. She wanted him. But when Eli finally found his voice, it wasn't the reaction she expected. He stepped back, not in fear, but in shock, and whispered, "Mara, there's something I need to tell you before anything happens." His voice trembled, and her heart sank. She stiffened, the same sinking feeling she had known since childhood tightening her chest. She had always been the girl too large for the world, too strong for delicate hearts, too intimidating for men. She braced herself for rejection, the kind that breaks quietly, like a door closing in someone's face. But Eli wasn't trying to hurt her. His hands shook as he removed his hat, revealing the truth he had spent years burying beneath silence. "I've never done any of this," he confessed. "I don't know how to be what you need." Mara blinked, surprised, her voice caught in her throat. Eli explained that he had spent most of his life alone on the ranch, working through dusty summers and freezing winters, never knowing what love felt like. People thought his shyness made him distant, but the truth was he had never felt worthy of anyone's affection. He was afraid of expectations, afraid of failing, afraid of disappointing someone as beautiful and brave as Mara. She stared at him, feeling her own fears reflected in his eyes. She realized that the man in front of her wasn't rejecting her. He was scared of losing something he had just begun to hope for. Mara's breath softened, her boldness melting into something gentler. She knelt slowly, bringing her eyes level with his, making sure he saw every ounce of honesty in her expression. "I didn't choose you because I expected strength or experience," she whispered. "I chose you because you look at me like I'm not a mistake." He felt something inside him loosen, something he had kept locked for years. For the first time, someone didn't see him as the shy cowboy to be pitied but as a man worth wanting. And that realization warmed every corner of him. Before he could respond, a sudden noise erupted from the darkness, the sharp snap of a branch breaking. Mara's body reacted instantly, rising protectively in front of Eli. They weren't expecting company, especially this late. The sound came again, heavier, closer, like someone, or something, was moving toward the ranch. Eli's heartbeat quickened, not because of fear alone but because danger had always pushed him into himself. Mara looked over her shoulder at him and whispered, "Stay close." For the first time, he wasn't afraid of disappointing her. He was afraid of losing her. The shadows stretched along the barn wall, and a tall silhouette emerged. Eli instantly recognized the figure, Clint Harrow, the rich oilman who had always wanted the land Eli lived on. Clint was known for using fear, lies, and pressure to take properties from lonely ranchers. Mara stiffened, sensing the tension. Clint smirked as he stepped into the lantern light. "So this is the giant bride everyone's whispering about," he said mockingly. Mara held her ground, and Eli watched the storm building inside her. Clint wasn't here for congratulations. He came to cause trouble. Clint stepped closer, ignoring Eli completely. "A woman like you doesn't belong here," he sneered. "You should be with someone powerful. Someone like me." The words hit Eli like a blade, reopening every insecurity he had shared moments earlier. But before he could shrink back again, Mara spoke with a voice that made the earth pause. I choose the man whose heart doesn't need wealth to be worth something. Clint's face darkened. Eli felt his courage shift, like a small fire rekindling. For the first time, someone defended him, not out of pity, but out of love. Clint stepped forward aggressively, but Mara placed herself squarely between him and Eli. Eli had never seen someone protect him with such fierce loyalty, and something within him awakened, a strength born not from size but from devotion. Clint scoffed and told Eli he was too weak to keep Mara safe. Eli's fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to speak up, to prove himself, but his voice failed him. Mara reached back and took his hand, her touch steadying him like warm sunlight after a long storm. The message was clear. He didn't need to fight alone. When Clint lunged forward, ready to shove Eli aside, Mara reacted instantly, grabbing Clint's arm and pinning him with effortless strength. Her voice shook with controlled rage. "You don't get to insult my husband," she said. Clint stumbled back, shocked that someone would defy him so boldly. Eli stared, amazed not by her power but by the gentleness she used even in anger. She didn't hurt Clint, she simply showed him that she wasn't afraid. Clint backed off, muttering threats, but Mara's steady gaze made him retreat into the dark. The danger was gone, for now. As the silence returned, Eli felt the adrenaline fade, replaced with something tender. He looked up at Mara, realizing she didn't need a hero. She needed someone who would stand with her, listen to her, and choose her without fear. Mara brushed dirt off her hands and turned toward him, expecting to see fear or embarrassment in his eyes. Instead, she found admiration. "You didn't need saving," she whispered. "You just needed someone to stand beside you," he replied softly. The simple truth made her giant heart feel lighter than it had in years. Eli reached for her hand again, this time with confidence. "What I was trying to say earlier," he murmured, "is that I don't know how to do any of this, but I want to learn with you." Mara's breath hitched, not from passion, but from emotion so deep it shook her entire chest. She had spent her life believing her size made her unlovable, too much for anyone to handle. But Eli wasn't overwhelmed, he was inspired. He wanted to grow with her, not despite her, but because of her. The moonlight softened as the two stood close, their shadows merging against the barn wall. Mara leaned down, resting her forehead against his. "When I said, 'Don't move,'" she whispered, "I wasn't ordering you. I was asking you to stay. No one has ever stayed." Eli wrapped his arms around her as far as they could reach, holding her with a sincerity that needed no explanation. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not tonight, not ever." She closed her eyes, letting his words settle into the places where old wounds had lived. They walked back toward the small cabin, not rushing, simply existing in a new kind of closeness. The storm of fear and uncertainty had passed, replaced by a quiet understanding that bound them stronger than passion alone ever could. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled softly, filling the room with a warm glow. Mara looked around, noticing the worn furniture, the imperfect walls, the quiet loneliness that had lived here before she arrived. She felt honored, almost humbled, that Eli wanted to share this life with her. "It finally feels like home," she whispered. Eli set his hat on the table and approached her with newfound courage. "Mara," he said gently, "I don't want to rush anything. I want tonight to be about trust." She placed her massive hand against his cheek, her touch surprisingly soft. "That's all I ever wanted," she replied. They didn't need the urgency of earlier or the bold words spoken in fear. They needed this, quiet, steady, healing connection. The kind that grows roots instead of sparks. Eli realized then that love wasn't something he had to perform. It was something he had to feel. The night stretched softly around them as they sat by the fire, sharing stories of wounds they had never voiced aloud. Mara spoke of being treated like a spectacle, Eli of being treated like a shadow. Together, they began rewriting the way they saw themselves, not as broken pieces but as two souls finally finding space to breathe. Eventually, Mara rested her head in his lap, and Eli gently ran his fingers through her hair. She felt cherished in a way she never expected. He felt needed in a way he never imagined. As dawn approached, the first hints of gold brushed the sky. Mara stood and gazed at the horizon, then looked back at Eli with a soft, steady smile. "You know," she whispered, "last night wasn't about what I said. It was about what I feared. He walked toward her, sliding his hand into hers. And what she asked softly, completing her own fractured title. Eli smiled, finishing the sentence for her. He finally realized he was worthy of being loved. Mara's eyes filled with emotion as she pulled him into a gentle embrace. They stepped outside into the newborn light, knowing that challenges would return, Clint included, but this time, they wouldn't be facing them alone. Mara had found someone who saw her heart before her height. Eli had found someone who saw his strength before his silence. Their story wasn't built on fear or urgency but on healing, loyalty, and the kind of love that grows slowly and stays forever. And as they walked back into the ranch together, hand in hand, both knew they had finally found what they had been searching for all their lives.